The city was experiencing a sunny, cloudless morning, the kind of day that made the downtown's glass towers shimmer, and the tree-lined avenue seemed to be alive with possibility. The briefing that Special Agent Maya Brooks was scheduled to deliver at the federal building in less than an hour was already on her mind as she drove her unmarked government sedan through the city center. Her ID badge was clipped to her belt, just visible beneath her jacket, and her credentials from the FBI were securely tucked away in her purse. Maya's years of training and experience gave her a quiet confidence that allowed her to navigate the world with calm and purpose. She had put in a lot of effort to get a job with the Bureau, and she was proud of her job, especially when it meant serving her community and following the law. She glanced at her phone to check the time and mentally review her notes as she waited at a red light. She eased into the intersection as the light turned green, seamlessly joining the flow of traffic. A city police cruiser with spinning lights and no siren flashed in her rear-view mirror a few blocks later. Maya gave a signal, pulled over to the curb, rolled down her window, and put both hands on the wheel as she had been instructed to do. She viewed the officer approaching in the side mirror, his brisk stride, an obscured expression behind mirrored sunglasses. He was a young man, probably in his early 30s, and his uniform looked like it had just been pressed. He had a buzz cut, with one hand resting on his belt. He came to a stop next to her window. His voice was sharp, and he said, "License and registration." Maya gave a nod and slowly reached into her purse to retrieve her wallet. "Naturally, officer. May I inquire about this?" Instead of responding, the officer closely observed her movements. Maya stacked her credentials from the FBI on top of her license, registration, and other documents. With a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, the officer glanced back at Maya after examining the badge. "FBI what?" He said it with skepticism in his voice. "That's a brand new one. You are aware that pretending to be a federal agent is a serious crime." Maya maintained a steady voice and relaxed posture. "I can vouch for the authenticity of my credentials, officer. You can check by calling the number on the back if you want." The officer laughed and shook his head. "Yes, absolutely. I'll immediately address that." Maya sat in the car, her heart beating a little faster, but her training kept her calm as he returned to his cruiser with her documents. She listened as he spoke into his radio, occasionally glancing back at her car. He came back a few minutes later, this time with a more assertive demeanor. He said, now in a tone that was almost condescending, "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Maya did as she was told, stepped onto the sidewalk, and stood tall. The officer laughed after looking at her from above and below. "Do you really think I'll think you're an FBI agent? Hold on. You got the badge from eBay, right?" With a steadfast expression, Maya met his gaze. "Officer, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. However, I would appreciate it if you treated me with the same respect as other professionals in law enforcement." The officer grinned, evidently enjoying the power struggle. He said, turning away to run her information once more. "We'll see about that." Maya didn't let the situation shake her as she stood by her car, even though she was aware of the curious looks from nearby people. She was aware of who she was and that the truth would emerge. She had no idea that the next few minutes would alter not only her day, but also the officers, and that the lesson they learned on that city street would have far-reaching effects beyond them both. The city's morning rhythm continued around Maya as she stood calmly on the sidewalk. Commuters hurrying to work, cyclists weaving through traffic, and a distant saxophone sound of a street musician echoing from a nearby corner. Even as the officer continued to treat her with a mix of disbelief and condescension, she kept her posture relaxed, her hands visible and her gaze steady. He remained by his cruiser, radio in hand, and spoke to the dispatcher in low tones. "Yeah, she says she's FBI, badge number, Brooks, Maya." "Yeah, I've got her ID here." Maya could hear snippets of the conversation. Maya couldn't make out the words, but there was a pause, and then a faint note of surprise in the dispatcher's voice. Although the officer's demeanor slightly changed, he still appeared unwilling to abandon his initial assumptions. He went back to Maya and, acting suspiciously, held her credentials between two fingers. "So, Agent Brooks, what brings you to this part of town?" he asked, his voice remaining skeptical but now curious. Maya responded calmly and professionally, stating that she was on her way to the federal building for a briefing and that her route was routine. She only stated the facts and let her calm confidence speak for itself, providing no unnecessary details. The officer appeared to be looking for something in her story that would support his suspicion, but he didn't find anything. Instead, he came face to face with a woman who was unflappable and clearly used to being questioned and undervalued. A second police cruiser pulled up as time passed, and a sergeant stepped out, a woman in her 40s with a straightforward demeanor and a reputation for fairness. She looked at the situation as she approached the scene with practiced eyes. "Officer Daniels, what's going on here?" she asked, speaking quickly without being rude. Daniels suddenly became more formal as he straightened. She was stopped for a minor traffic violation. He trailed off before handing the sergeant Maya's credentials. "She claims to be FBI, but..." The sergeant furrowed her brow as she read the information on the ID and badge. She turned back to Daniels after looking up at Maya. "Have you contacted the Bureau to verify her credentials?" Daniels was hesitant. He was interrupted by the sergeant. "I called dispatch, but I'll deal with it." Her demeanor changed to one of professional courtesy as she turned to Maya. "Agent Brooks, I sincerely apologize for the difficulty. May I request the contact information for your supervisor so that we can directly confirm everything?" Maya gave the number without hesitation after giving a nod. Daniels was left awkwardly positioned next to Maya because the sergeant stepped aside to make the call. Daniels seemed for the first time uncertain. A flicker of doubt replaced the bravado that had characterized his previous interactions. He gave Maya, the sergeant, and then back to Maya a quick glance. He said, his voice now quieter, "You know, we get a lot of people try and pull one over on us." Maya gave a gentle but firm nod. "I comprehend, officer. However, it is essential to treat everyone with respect, particularly when you are uncertain of their identity." Daniels uncomfortably shifted as he clearly struggled to accept that he might have misjudged the situation. A few minutes later, the sergeant came back with serious but respectful expression. "Your credentials have been verified, Agent Brooks. I sincerely regret the delay and any disrespect you may have experienced. We are grateful for your cooperation, and you are free to leave." She nodded as she returned the documents to Maya. His face was flushed as Daniels looked down. Her voice was low and firm as she turned to face him. "Officer Daniels, I would like to speak with you again at the station following your shift," I said. "We will examine the procedure for professional interactions with other agencies." Maya graciously accepted the apology and thanked the sergeant for her professional conduct. She returned to her vehicle, grabbed her documents, and got ready to leave. She saw Daniel standing beside his cruiser, the weight of the morning's events settling on his shoulders. When she glanced in the rearview mirror as she drove away from the curb, Maya felt both relief and compassion. She knew that moments like these were opportunities for growth, not just for herself, but for everyone involved. The knowledge that she had handled the situation in a dignified manner, and that perhaps a lesson had been learned on both sides of the badge, strengthened her resolve as she continued on to her briefing. Maya's morning continued in the same steady rhythm of professionalism she had come to expect from her job at the Bureau. For the rest of the day, she made it to Federal Building in time, gave her briefing to a room full of attentive agents and analysts, smiled warmly but focusedly as she greeted her co-workers. However, despite the fact that she presented the specifics of her case with authority and clarity, a part of her mind remained focused on the encounter from earlier that day. She had been misunderstood and questioned before, but the incident with Officer Daniels had left a more lasting impression than most. She was most bothered by the fact that the situation had so easily escalated, not because of any actual threat, but rather because of assumptions and a lack of professional courtesy, not the skepticism or even the initial disrespect. Maya went to her supervisor's office after the meeting to report the morning's events for the record, not as a complaint. Linda Chun, special agent in charge, attentively listened with a thoughtful expression. She said, "You handled yourself well, Maya. I'll note the incident and get in touch with the precinct. We must treat our employees with respect as much as we must maintain positive working relationships with local law enforcement." Maya acknowledged the support with a nod. She stated, "I don't want to cause trouble for anyone. However, I do believe it is a teachable moment." Chun concurred and promised to follow up and ensure that the message was conveyed in a spirit of cooperation rather than conflict. Officer Daniels, who had previously displayed bravado, now sat in the sergeant's office at the precinct. Daniels was asked to sit as the door was shut by the sergeant, Ramirez. She even said, "Walk me through what happened." Daniels talked about the stop, his first suspicion, and how he had brushed aside Maya's credentials. He thought about how his actions must have appeared, not only to Maya but also to anyone watching as he spoke. He said in a low voice, "I thought I was doing my job. However, I guess my presumptions got in the way." Ramirez gave a straightforward nod with an expression that was neither harsh nor forgiving. "Daniels, we all make mistakes. It matters that we gain knowledge from them. You are an excellent officer, but you need to keep in mind that respect comes from both sides. You never know who you're dealing with or what another person has gone through to get to where they are." She gave him a copy of the department's interagency protocol, pointing out the sections about professional courtesy and verification procedures. "Go over this. Also, lead with respect the next time. You'll go further than any suspicion could." Daniels gave the feedback his humble nod and nodded. With a renewed sense of purpose and a resolve to improve, he left the office. A joint message from Agent Chun and Sergeant Ramirez stressing the significance of interagency cooperation and respect was sent via email that afternoon to the police department and the local FBI field office. The message was clear. Professionalism was a quality of character as well as a matter of policy. It served as a reminder that every interaction was a chance to grow, learn, and establish trust. Knowing that her experience had sparked a conversation that might prevent similar misunderstandings in the future, Maya read the email with satisfaction. Sergeant Ramirez called back, apologizing once more on behalf of the department and inviting her to speak at a training session on interagency relations. Maya accepted because she saw it as an opportunity to transform a bad experience into a force for good. Maya's story became a quiet example within both agencies over the course of the week, serving as a reminder that even seasoned professionals can fall victim to bias and that humility and accountability can lead to real progress. Daniels, on the other hand, made it a point to get in touch with Maya, writing a handwritten note of apology and promising to do better. Maya recognized the bravery required to admit a mistake and seek reconciliation and appreciated the gesture. A few weeks later, the two met for coffee, and they had an open and constructive conversation. They discussed the difficulties that come with their respective positions, the demands that come with public service, and the significance of empathic law enforcement. Despite their initial awkwardness, they had developed a mutual respect by the end of their meeting. The event vanished from daily discourse, but its impact persisted. Knowing that her actions had changed the culture of the organization she served as well as herself, Maya carried on with her work with renewed determination, sharing his experience with new recruits and encouraging them to approach every circumstance with an open mind. Daniels became an advocate for improved communication and training. The lessons learned that day made the city a little better, despite its complexity and difficulties. Maya's experience also served as a powerful reminder of the power of respect, patience, and professionalism to transform even the most unpleasant situations into opportunities for growth and comprehension. The lessons learned from Maya and Officer Daniels' encounter shaped the city's law enforcement community over the course of several months. Maya's agreement to lead the joint training session became a significant event that attracted officers and agents from all over the city, as well as representatives from other agencies, city officials, and even a few community leaders. As Maya took the stage, the audience was buzzing with anticipation because of her calm and authoritative demeanor. She didn't start by talking about the incident. Instead, she told a story about her early days working for the Bureau. It was about a time when she, too, had made assumptions and had to learn the hard way that respect and humility were the foundation of good police work. She talked about how important it is to see the person behind the badge, how important it is to recognize the common goal that unites all public servants, and how a single moment can change a career or life. Her words resonated deeply, not just because of her rank or her experience, but because she spoke with honesty and vulnerability. She invited Officer Daniels to join her on stage, and the two of them talked about their perspectives, respond to questions, and push for open discussion. Daniels, who had previously resisted the idea of being corrected by anyone, now discussed his own development openly. He admitted, I thought I knew what respect looked like, but I realized I was only seeing it from my side. He said this, understanding that respect is a two-way street, required being pointed out gently but firmly. I'm thankful for the opportunity to learn, and I hope my story can help other people avoid making the same mistake. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with a standing ovation at the session's conclusion. After that, officers and agents stayed around to tell their own stories and talk about ways to build trust and communication between the agencies. The management of the department noticed, and as soon as possible, new procedures were put into place. These included regular joint trainings, a mentorship program that pairs city officers with federal agents, and a commitment to ongoing education regarding professionalism, bias, and community engagement. Maya was asked to be on an interagency advisory board, where her ideas help make policy and make a culture of respect for each other. As a mentor to younger officers and an advocate for a more open and collaborative approach to policing, Daniels also discovered a new sense of purpose. Law enforcement was not the only recipient of the ripple effects. The change, officers who listened more, explained their actions, and treated everyone with dignity regardless of circumstance, was noticed by members of the community. Once fragile, trust began to grow. Maya's story was told in the local newspaper, not as a conflict story, but as an illustration of how accountability and empathy can make even the most difficult situations better. The experience was both humiliating and empowering for Maya. She continued to perform admirably at work, earning the esteem of her co-workers and the appreciation of those she served. She never forgot what she learned that morning, how important it is to be true to who you are, to show grace in the face of disrespect, and to use every challenge as an opportunity to teach and learn. Her unlikely friendship with Daniels is a testament to the power of second chances and the possibility of change. She and Daniels kept in touch. A celebration honoring those who had contributed to the new era of cooperation was co-hosted at the end of the year by the city's police chief and the regional director of the FBI. Maya and Daniels accepted their award side by side, their tale now woven into the fabric of the city's development. Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she gazed out over the group of officers, agents, community members, and leaders. She was aware that the standard had been raised, even though the journey had not been straightforward and there were still obstacles to overcome. Respect, professionalism, and empathy were no longer just words in a manual. Rather, they were lived values that were exemplified by every badge-wearing employee. Maya also caught Daniel's eye as the ceremony ended and the crowd mingled. He smiled a little sheepishly, and she smiled back, aware that they contributed to the creation of something lasting together. A new standard for their city and a legacy of dignity and understanding that would last for many years.